welcome back. I found where you're supposed to go. It's here. And we're doing it. I have to finish that therapy thought I had yesterday. So I'm trying to figure out what I want. And the therapist brings up like, oh, do you want kids? Well, that's weird. What? Okay. And I went on this kind of long rant about like things I've talked about here, which is like, well, I don't think I can have a kid until I figure out like, I don't even know how to live my life, so how could I tell another person to live their life? For like 5 minutes I was talking about like, oh, I don't know, maybe I want a kid, but like I should figure that out first, and obviously like I'd have to have a partner. I had to figure all that stuff out. And then the therapist was just like, okay, so we're still undecided on that part. What did she say? She said, I went on the long rant on like the meaning of life, and she was like, okay, so still undecided then. I was like, yeah, I don't know. But like, there were a couple instances, and this is kind of interesting. I've been judging, so I just moved to upstate New York, which is kind of like a rural area. I've been judging people a little bit. I went to this Spectrum store for the internet. Where am I stuck? How do I... Oh, okay. How do you do this? What the what? This doesn't make any sense. How do I don't understand how this is working. There was this big dude, and he had a little daughter, and she was just walking around like looking at stuff, and he was doing this thing like, get over here, you gotta stop, you gotta get over here. And I'm like, that's a terrible parent. Why is he doing that? Why is he being so weird? And he did it twice. He's like, I don't know, I get the feeling like he likes doing that. He likes being that person, but I'm like, that's a bad parent. And I guess I was feeling a little bit extra judgmental of like, oh, well, up in these rural areas, parents are bad and they're mean. But people where I live are like that too. I mean, everybody's everywhere, all different kinds of people. But I did find myself being kind of like, when I went to Walmart to get some food, and I was looking at people and I'm like, oh, that guy, he looks like a rural person. I'm like, I'm judging him. You're like, oh, you don't see people like that in New Jersey. But you do, I don't know. I don't know why I was being so weird about it. And there's like some people like overweight, and I'm like, oh, that's what you hear, overweight people. There's overweight people in New Jersey. How do I do this? Stupid wall masters are getting me. Eat out. Eat out. Eat. Oh, I must do it again. Hit him. Did I do it? Did I do it? Am I done? What was I even doing? What was the point of that? Oh. Stupid. Okay. And was being kids. Oh. there was another instance of an adult being like a bad. Oh, this is stupid, but I was watching this video. I don't know how much of this I want to explain, but whatever. It was this old show where I watched this guy on YouTube. His name's Hasanabi. I don't like that I watch him because he's too opinionated, but I watch him and they get recommended and it's entertaining. I gotta stop, but I don't like his philosophy of life about like how you gotta yell at people who you disagree with, and you gotta be mean because they're stupid. That's like his life philosophy. Okay, I think you probably have to do something like this, and like this, and like this. Did I do it? And like this. Okay, cool. I'm gonna save. He's watching this show called Black White, which is like an old cable show about this white family who wears blackface, and they go out into the world and they try to experience what it's like to be a black person, and then this black family wears whiteface and they go out and they do the same thing. And he's kind of watching it and making fun of it. What is that thing? Stop following me. Eat. That's why I saved. And there was a situation where I need to focus for a second. Okay, let me think. One of the black kids who was wearing whiteface was around other white kids, and one of them said the N-word or something. And then the black kid was like, "Oh, I don't mind when people say the N-word. It doesn't bother me." And then his parents found out about that, and they were like, well, that's bad. Like, you gotta care about that, and which is true, but the way they explained it, was bad. The way they explained, I mean, they're black, so they can explain it however they want, but I was like, okay, your son has an opinion, and he's 16 years old, he's like a baby, and then the mom was getting really mad at him, like, and she started cursing at him, and I'm like, this is bad parenting. If your kid is doing something like that, and you don't think it's right, then you have to explain it. And the dad was like, "You're 16 years old, you should know better by now, and I thought I treated you better." I was like, wait, you obviously didn't treat him, or you didn't tell him the right thing, so now explain it. But the problem was, like, the dad's he didn't know how to explain it. He's just like, "Yes, it's a bad word, so you shouldn't say it." But that's not enough. Like, that's not a good explanation. So I'm like, yeah, I could do a better job than that guy, explaining about how the N-word is bad. So maybe I should have a kid. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I get worried about, like, oh, I'm going to do a bad job. But then I see that guy and I'm like, yeah, his kid seems fine. Like, he's a good kid. And he's not doing a very good job explaining stuff. Like, if that's how he reacts to things when his kid does something wrong, how does that kid such a good kid? Maybe kids are just good and they just want to be good. All you really have to do, and I feel like this is kind of true, is just be kind to your kid and just love them most of the time, and they'll turn out fine. Like, my parents didn't know, if I said the N-word and my parents found out and they were like, "You should never say that because it's a bad word," they wouldn't know how to explain the history of, like, the N-word or whatever. I mean, I know I can't really do that either, but I could do a better job than my parents. to help my kid understand. The because I said so thing. I never want to do that. I know every parent kind of is like, well, I never want to do it, but then sometimes your kid's like annoying and you just say, because I said so. And I'm sure that's true. But like, explain it. They weren't explaining it at all. Why is the N-word bad? He was like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. I don't get offended by the N-word. If people want to use it, they can use it. Like, if someone's calling me the N-word and they're like angry at me, then that's like, yeah, I'm gonna get upset. But if they're just like, we're like friends and they just use it, like, I'm fine with that. And he's a 16-year-old kid. Like, your first reaction as a parent, if you hear that that's happening, shouldn't be to just be like cursing at him and be like, I thought you were better than this, and I thought I raised you better. I could do a better job than that. That's all I'm saying. Ugh. Hate this game. Can I play Katamari Damacy again? I have so much money. What do I spend my money on? So what would I say to my kid if he was white and he used the N-word? It's easier to explain it, I think, if you're a white person and your kid is white and he uses the N-word. I think it's a little bit easier to just be like, yeah, no, obviously you can't use that word. But what if he asked me, like, well, why? Well, son, because I said so. Why You Shouldn't Use the N-Word by Anthony. And I feel like I've been a little bit ahead of the curve on this one. Because I remember Louis C.K. did a bit about, like, he used the N-word and he's like, oh, it's okay that I use the N-word because, like, when you say the N-word, you're putting the N-word in my head. And I'm like, no, still no. And now Louis C.K. is a whole thing, so I was right about Louis C.K. I still think he's funny, but he was wrong about the N-word. And the N-word, like, it's like the one word you can't use, and you're like, oh, I want to use it. Just don't use one word. Calm down. If you want to use the word so bad, you're racist. Just don't say it. But, okay. That's not my reasoning, still. Was this the boss? I'm gonna save that. How did I die here? I don't know, I'll fight the boss tomorrow, I guess. Oh, that's what happened. I remember. Stupid, so stupid. Okay, here's the boss. I'll fight him tomorrow. Oh, it's a conveyor belt. It's a Mothra. It's a Mothra. Okay. So here, I feel like I might have said this once before. Here's why a white person shouldn't say the N-word. Because of the history of the word, you can't. A lot of people will just say, like, oh, well, it's just a word and it's just noises. But words have meanings and they have history to them. When I talk to you and I say something, I wish I could think of a good example, but I'm like, let's go to the beach. Like, that phrase and that saying has a history and a meaning between me and between you and between the whole history of the world. Words have meanings and histories that you can't separate from them. It's not just noises. It's language, and language is connection to people. So okay, the N-word, what's the history of the N-word? That was the word in America, where I live right now, the same place that I lived 200, 300 years ago. White people like me, maybe even my ancestors, some of them, I don't know, used that word to make black people feel like they were less than human. They used that word to subjugate them, to make them slaves. That's the history of the word. They used it when slaves were acting bad. They would call them that word to make them feel like they were less than white people. That's the history of the word. And so when you use that word, that's the history of it. So even if you're just saying it like, oh, whatever, and it's different when black people use it, obviously, because it's their word and they know the history, so if they want to use it, they can use it. But white people like me, so that's obviously why you can't use it in anger. But everybody knows that. You can't, if you're using it in anger, you're doing the same thing that slaveholders did. You're trying to make black people feel like they're less than white people, like they're less than human. That's bad, right? We can all agree that that's bad, right? But what about, I don't know if I've really, so what if my kid says like, oh, I was just using it with my black friend and he said it was okay. I would still tell him, like, I guess my point there would be like, racism still exists in the country. So when you use that word, you can't, there's still like a through line from history to now of dehumanization. And like, even if you're using it, I don't know, is it okay if a black friend tells you, you can call me that if you want? I still would never do it. Maybe it would be okay. I don't know. But I would, now here's why I would never use it. It's because of that history, and I know that history, and even I can never separate the history. Like if, oh, my friend is a black person and he says it's okay, whenever I said the word, I would feel that history. And I would feel that empathy of like, you're not my N-word. This is so weird. You're not. You're my equal. You're my brother. If a white person calls a black person the N-word, I can't separate the history. It still feels demeaning. Maybe if you're a white person, you can say it in a way that you can separate that history somehow. But I don't know if you can, really. That's all I'm gonna say, I guess. So I don't know. Our son, are you still paying attention? Did you fall asleep? Does any of that make sense? My son, my flesh and blood, you shouldn't say the N-word. Okay, and that's it for that. So I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.